What if I told you that you could learn a new language, not from some boring old textbook, but from an ancient, magical legend? Well, today, we're diving into something called the Benkenteich method. It's this really fascinating approach that uses the power of a great story to teach English. We're going to break down exactly how this incredible tale becomes such a powerful and effective tool for learning.
Okay, let's be real for a second. We've all been there, right? Staring at endless verb charts and long vocabulary lists, and your eyes just start to glaze over. It can feel so, abstract, so disconnected from how people actually talk. It's no wonder people get discouraged when learning feels more like a chore than a real adventure.
But imagine learning those exact same rules through a story you can't put down, one that's packed with heroes and villains and a little bit of magic. Now, that's the whole idea behind the Benkenteich method. It's all about turning language learning into an adventure that's intuitive, memorable, and, get this, actually fun.
So what's the secret sauce here? How does it actually work? Well, it's surprisingly simple, really. Instead of just forcing you to memorize a bunch of rules, it gets you to see language the way it's meant to be used, in action, telling a story.
The process is basically two simple steps. First, you just dive headfirst into the world of the legend. You get to know the characters, you feel the suspense, you get totally invested. And only then, once you're already hooked on the story, do you start to look at the nuts and bolts of the language. It's such a clever way to connect something abstract like grammar to a story that you already care about.
So at the very heart of this whole method is the legend itself. The legend of the Benkenteich isn't just a story. No way. It's this whole world of myth and magic that gives every single word real weight and purpose.
And you know, what's a great legend without some unforgettable characters? You've got George Kaufman. He's kind of the everyday guy who becomes a hero. Then there's Alaric, our main hero, this brave water nymph who's on this desperate mission to save his wife, Liana. And of course, standing in his way is the villain Kalin, a seriously dark and jealous water spirit. These are the kinds of characters you instantly get, the ones you root for, or, root against.
And just listen to this description. It gives you a real taste of the world, doesn't it? It's not just words on a page. It's so dramatic. It's full of tension. This is the kind of writing that makes you lean in and think, okay, what happens next? And to figure that out, you've got to understand the language.
All right, so let's see how this all starts to come together in the first part of the learning process, which is all about reading comprehension. But we're going way beyond just, what happens in the story. This is where the legend actually starts teaching you how to think critically. And this is where it gets really smart. The lessons don't just ask you to follow the plot. They actually challenge you to dig a little deeper. So you'll be asked to compare characters, to find the exact words in the story that prove Alaric is brave, or that show Kalin is greedy. You see, you're not just memorizing vocabulary, you're learning it through the personalities of the characters themselves. The method also helps you see the story's architecture, kind of like its blueprint. By mapping out cause and effect, you can clearly see how Liana getting captured directly forces Alaric to fight, or how George's simple act of kindness leads to him getting a magical reward. It's a really powerful way to learn how stories are built, all while sharpening your logic skills.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on the characters and the plot. Now let's tackle the part of language learning that often trips people up the most: grammar. And honestly, this is where the Benkenteich method truly shines, because it teaches all that tricky stuff using a story we're already completely hooked on. I mean, think about it for a second. A legend is just a story about things that have already happened. So to understand it, we naturally have to get comfortable with the simple past tense. And what is it? Just a way to talk about actions that are done, that are finished. A simple idea, right? But now let's see how the story makes it totally unforgettable. This is the brilliant part. Instead of giving you some random list of verbs to memorize, you're working with words pulled directly from the most exciting parts of the story. So, led isn't just a verb, it's what George did to guide Alaric. Struck is that huge climactic moment when Alaric finally defeats Kalin. Every single grammar point is tied to a key moment in the plot, which helps it stick in your brain so much better.
And this approach works for all sorts of grammar concepts. Let's take conjunctions, for example. Those little words like and, but, or if that basically glue our sentences together. The method starts out simply again, with a nice, clear definition. And then, bam, it hits you with this super dramatic sentence, straight out of the legend. Suddenly, you see the word and not as some boring grammar rule, but as the one thing connecting two intense events: the water turning red, and then the horrifying silence that followed. The story provides the context that makes the rule finally make sense. It's not a rule on a page anymore, it's a part of the action.
So let's just step back for a second and ask the big question. Why does learning through a story work so darn well? It's not just because it's more entertaining, though that helps. There's some real brain science behind it. Turns out, our brains are fundamentally deeply wired for narrative.
It really boils down to these 4 things. First, there's context. The story creates this rich mental world where abstract rules can actually live and make sense. Second, connection. When we care about characters like Alaric and Lyanna, our brains create stronger memories. It's an emotional hook. Third, motivation. You're not just studying to pass some test. You're driven by that natural human curiosity to find out what happens next. And finally, application. You see language for what it truly is. Not just a bunch of rules, but a living tool for creating worlds and making people feel things.
And you know what's really powerful is that the learning goes way beyond just language. The legend itself has this timeless, universal message about good triumphing over evil. And that adds a whole other layer to the experience, making it not just educational, but, well, truly meaningful. The Benkenteich method is just a fantastic reminder that the stories we love, the ones that captivate us, can also be our greatest teachers. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What stories in your life or out there in the world hold the key to your next big learning adventure? Thanks for joining me for this one.